investigative updates. I'll take some questions. If there's anything I don't have answers to, I'll try to get those answers and come back to you tomorrow. Okay? I'll start first with the status of the crime scene. Yesterday when I was here, I told you that the crime scene would likely be up until today, and that we expected our work in the crime scene to be done today. Our work is done in the crime scene, however, and steps are being taken to reopen the streets that have been closed since Saturday night. It's taking a bit longer than anticipated. We now expect that closure to remain in place at least until tomorrow. We're working with the City of Vancouver, which is taking steps to reopen that secure area. Personal property that has been recovered from that crime scene that was not seized as evidence is being recovered, and we are going to establish a process, which I will be able to tell you about hopefully tomorrow, to return that property to people. We're just working out the details of that. So I'll come back tomorrow hopefully and provide a bit more information. We understand that the fact that this closure, this crime scene has been in place now into our 4th day, has had an impact on the immediate surrounding community, the school, people who live in the area, and businesses particularly that operate along Fraser Street. We thank everybody for their patience. We know this has had an impact, and we're working to get that area reopened as soon as possible. I'm going to provide a little bit of clarification on something I told you about yesterday. Of the 11 murder victims, I told you yesterday that 9 were women and 2 were men. Slight clarification there. 8 are women, 1 is a 5-year-old girl, and 2 are men. The medical status of the surviving victims who are in hospital remains unchanged. 7 people remain in critical condition. 3 people remain in serious condition. Of the 7 people in critical condition, 2 are women, 5 are men, and they range in age from 29 to 66. The youngest and the oldest both being men. Of the patients in hospital who are in serious condition, they are all male, and they range in age from 22 months to 60 years old. We are working to confirm the nationalities of all victims, homicide victims and surviving victims. I told you yesterday, of the 11 homicide victims, we've confirmed that 10 of them were Metro Vancouver residents. We are still doing extra work to confirm their nationalities. We're working with partners, particularly at Global Affairs Canada, to do so. If there are surviving victims who are foreign nationals, we encourage them to contact their consulate for support. In terms of the investigation, it's ongoing, and it will be ongoing for some time. We have full-time investigators that we've pulled from various sections throughout the Vancouver Police Department.
Thank you. Also, how many foreign nationals are also?
We don't have that information.
Do we know how many children were either injured or killed in the attack?
Amongst the homicide victims, the murder victims, the youngest was 5 years old. Of the surviving victims who are still in hospital, there is 1 child, and that child is 22 months old.
So at least 1 child killed and at least 1 child injured?
Yes, there are other victims who are not currently in serious or critical condition, who are not amongst the 11 murder victims. There are a number of people who are injured here. I don't have additional specific information, demographic information about their ages or genders and stuff. Kim?
Can you give us a time frame, like a start date or a rough start date and an end date to Vancouver Police interactions with this person in the months or years prior to this event?
I don't have that information, and I'm not prepared to say more than what we've already said, and that is, and I know you've heard, but I'll repeat it for those who haven't. The accused in this case has had previous interactions with police and medical professionals related to mental health.
Follow up, please. Were your officers aware of the interaction with the neighboring jurisdiction before Saturday's event or only afterwards?
The interaction in the neighboring jurisdiction that occurred the day before, April 25th, was something that was not criminal in nature and did not rise to the level of requiring mental health intervention. Generally speaking, I can tell you that whether it's in Vancouver or a neighboring jurisdiction, when a police officer attends a call for service, a report is written about that call for service. It goes into a database, the Prime database, that all police officers would have access to. So there is documentation of that. However, I'm not aware of any specific information that was directly passed on to the Vancouver Police Department or any other police department related to that interaction. And I can tell you what I do know about that interaction. In my experience, it's not something that would warrant proactive outreach.
Several officers down there on the immediate day and afterwards. How are they doing?
Well, like everybody else in the community who's had to experience this, many of us are dealing with it in different ways, but we're all struggling to a certain degree in our own ways, but we have lots of support here. So critical incident stress debriefs, we call them diffusings, peer support, and other services that our organization provides to us. I certainly don't want to make this about us. This is about the community. This is about victims and families and healing for the community, and we're absolutely part of that community. And while this has an impact on us, we don't want this conversation to be about us. We have a job to do. We're professionals. We're impacted by this, but we need to maintain our focus here. Our focus is on victims, families, and collecting the evidence that we need to complete this investigation. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, just a quick follow-up to the kind of charge recommendation and assessment.
Yeah.
Are you waiting to hear back from the prosecution service on some of what you've already forwarded, or are you still in the process of just forwarding evidence?
During an investigation, I'm going to speak in general terms because I don't have a specific answer for this, but during an investigation like this, generally what will happen is we'll submit the evidence that we have in the first instance, and that evidence resulted in the laying of those 8 second-degree murder charges. And through the course of the investigation, at various times, we will submit additional evidence, which will presumably result in additional charges. And that may take place multiple times over the course of this investigation, because we're not just talking about 11 murder victims here, we're talking about other people who are victims who have been seriously injured. Many of them we may not even know about yet. As I said yesterday, there may be people who left the area who have not come forward for personal reasons, and should they choose to come forward, we'll then begin a process to investigate and speak to them. So the answer to that is we will continuously provide updates to Crown Counsel. We'll allow them to go through their charge assessment process, which is independent of us, and I certainly don't want to speak for Crown or their timeline, but we'll just continue to do our work. Okay, go ahead.
Irish Associated Press, you said that the contact police had the flow the day before the attack was not criminal in nature. So did a citizen report someone acting strangely? Like,
I'm not
was it
prepared to get
criminal?
into additional detail.
And was it police who had that contact with Lowe who determined while responding to the call that he did not need mental health treatment? Was it police who made that decision?
I'm not prepared to get into further detail.
Can you give us a sense of what needs to be collected in the area and how long that process will take, and whether there's concerns from people who feel too traumatized to come back to the scene?
So to clarify, I think the question was, give us a sense of what needs to be collected in the area and if there's concerns for people who may be too traumatized to come back to the scene. So our investigative work is complete. Personal property that has been left behind has been retrieved. We're working on a process to return that to the rightful owners. The City of Vancouver has taken responsibility to take steps to reopen that area, and they've asked that we refer specific questions to them about what those steps are. The follow-up to your question, there may be people who are either victims or witnesses who have not come forward, who left the crime scene in the aftermath, who are struggling, who are traumatized, who may need help, professional help, whether it's medical help or emotional help. And that's one of the reasons why we've established a community support center in the area. We encourage people to come, if they're seeking information, if they're seeking support, want to know what their options are. They're more than welcome to come forward. We invite them to come forward. We'll provide additional information in the days ahead about how people can independently reach out if they'd like to speak to our Victim Services Unit, which is a team of civilian, professional, trained victim support workers. And we'll provide some additional information about that in the days ahead for anybody in the community who continues to struggle.
Steve, do you have a better idea at this point of the total number of people injured?
I'm not going to give a specific number. But it's dozens. Between people who are injured and people who have been killed, there are dozens of victims.
And is the number of killed still 11?
Yes.
Is there any indication about people in?
I'm not prepared to. We're not going to speculate. There are 11 people who have died.
Okay.
There are additional people in hospital. 7 are in critical condition. 3 are serious.
This question was asked earlier, but I just want to clarify. So was Vancouver Coastal Health contacted during or after the encounter police had with one of the departments?
I'm not prepared to provide additional information about the April 25th interaction or contact that this individual had with police beyond what I've already told you. And you can ask me as many times as you want, the answer's not going to change. There was contact with the police in a neighboring jurisdiction on April 25th, the day before this incident. That contact was not criminal in nature and it did not rise to the level where mental health intervention was required.
The contact was in person?
You can ask me as many different times as you want. My answer is not going to change.
Justine Hunter with the Globe and Mail.
Hi,
I was
Justine.
wondering if you could tell me if you're investigating this as a hate crime?
This appears, all indications are this was completely indiscriminate act of violence. We are not investigating this at this point as a hate crime.
All right, thanks.
Next question, go ahead. Go ahead, your question.
Mike, in Vancouver.
Go ahead.
This morning, the Premier announced that he wants to establish an independent commission to set up some guidelines, communities across the province to ensure that if they want to hold public events this summer, that they will be safe and run smoothly. And I'm wondering if the Premier's office has contacted the VPD and whether the VPD will be involved in any way in that commission.
Well, first of all, Mike, I'll tell you, we welcome any additional support. The province of British Columbia is prepared and willing to provide. Mayor Sim has already announced that the City of Vancouver will be undergoing an internal review. We have said very clearly that while we believe that the planning for this particular event was sound and that everything was done appropriately, that we're certainly open to reviews and to considering what changes may need to be made in the future. So we welcome any review the province will do, and we welcome any additional support. We're confident that we already implement best practices for hosting events, big and small. We've hosted the Olympics, we're hosting FIFA next year, we hosted 3 nights of Taylor Swift last year, we host Celebration of Lights every year down at the waterfront that brings hundreds of thousands of people out. We have more than 1,000 protests a year in this city, more than 3,200 different events, ranging from small community block parties to 3 consecutive nights of Taylor Swift that bring tens of thousands of people to our city. We know how to host safe events safely and properly. Our planning for these events, it's done by senior planners in our emergency operations section. overseen by our most senior executive. We have sent our own people, our own officers around the world to learn from other countries, including sending officers to the last FIFA World Cup to learn in first person from their experiences and bring that knowledge back so that when we host FIFA next year, we're implementing best practices.
How do you identify 200 witnesses and why it's taking time to interview them?
Well, some of the witnesses were present at the crime scene in the immediate aftermath and were identified immediately by our officers as they responded to this vehicle attack. Others have come forward after the fact. We will continue the process to seek out and interview people who have information, witnesses, that will help us complete this investigation. There's 200 witnesses. To interview them properly in a trauma-informed way that protects the integrity of our criminal, very serious criminal investigation, it's going to take time, and we're going to take the time to do it right. A witness who comes forward is coming forward on their own initiative and needs to participate in an investigation on their own volition, and we need to treat them with respect in a trauma-informed and victim-centered way. So while it is a priority to collect every piece of evidence and every piece of perishable evidence we can to complete this investigation in a reasonable time frame, we're going to take the time that we need to do it right. Any more questions, Mike?
Yes, one more, please.
Go ahead.
I know that the VPD trains for active shooter situations. There's been numerous actually with emergency personnel over the years about preparing for a disaster like an earthquake. How do you prepare for something that, by all accounts, was unpredictable and just maybe flush that out of that?
The very nature of this vehicle attack was unpredictable, and as we've talked about already, it's hard to safeguard, it's hard to predict. Well, it's impossible to predict the unpredictable. That's what makes it unpredictable. However, once this horrific crime, this vehicle attack occurred, every available police officer used all of their skills and experience to respond and to respond professionally. And that's everybody from the first officers who were on scene, who were tending to victims who were seriously injured, frightened, some of them potentially running away out of fear, extremely traumatized, and doing so in working with them in a trauma-informed and careful way, to providing immediate first aid to those most seriously injured, to tending to the people who didn't make it. Our first responders, the people who showed up first and dropped everything to rush there, did an amazing job. And again, I don't want to make this about us, because this is about the community, and this is about the lives that have been lost, and the victims and the families and the community and the healing. But aside from those first responders who did heroic work in the immediate aftermath, in the minutes and the hours after this horrific attack, we have our most experienced investigators who have been working around the clock to collect evidence. The Vancouver Police Department was involved or engaged in planning and discussions for more than 3,200 different community events last year, ranging from, as I said, major concerts, fireworks, to small community events. There's a process that takes place, risk assessments that take place. Generally speaking, well, I can give you specific numbers. Last year, out of the 3,200 different events that we were engaged with, we deployed heavy vehicle barriers, those dump trucks that you see, at 9. Okay? We do an assessment through our emergency planning section with senior planners. It's overseen by very experienced police officers to conduct assessments. We work with community groups, we work with the city as well to determine the most appropriate measures to put in place. So if you're out here for the Sun Run on Sunday, the Vancouver Sun Run 10K, 10-kilometer course throughout the city, the biggest organized run in Canada. You would have seen a mix of safety measures, everything from heavy vehicle barriers to intersections where you had police officers in vehicles with lights on, to other smaller intersections where you may have just had a wooden barrier. And you'd see the same at any large event, whether it's the fireworks, where you come down to the West End and you see the heavy vehicle barriers. Taylor Swift concert outside BC Place, we had heavy vehicle barriers. Generally speaking, when we talk about heavy vehicle barriers, like those big dump trucks, they're put in places where there are large crowds gathering, and no secret, we put them there to prevent vehicles from entering areas where there are large crowds. And this has been the result of horrible tragedies that have occurred in other cities around the world, where people in vehicles have ran through crowds and killed people. So the decision that's made on where to place heavy vehicle barriers is contingent on the nature of the event, the risk assessment of the event, and where crowds will be.